You meet someone new. Within a few seconds, before they've said a single meaningful word, you've already decided things about them. Are they smart? Are they kind? Are they trustworthy? You didn't ask for any evidence. Your brain just handed you an answer. And here's the strange part. If that person happens to be conventionally attractive, your brain's answers tend to skew dramatically positive on almost every trait you can imagine, even ones that have absolutely nothing to do with appearance. You probably think you're too smart to fall for this, but the real answer is far stranger. This bias doesn't just affect strangers on the street, it affects hiring managers, judges, teachers, and juries. It has been measured in classrooms, courtrooms, and boardrooms, and it works on you constantly in ways you almost never notice. This is called the halo effect, and it might be one of the most quietly powerful biases in the human mind. Let's go back to where this discovery began. In 1920, psychologist Edward Thorndike was studying how military officers rated their soldiers. He asked commanding officers to evaluate their men on a range of separate traits: physical qualities, intelligence, leadership, character. Thorndike expected these ratings to vary independently. A soldier could be physically strong but not particularly intelligent. A soldier could be a strong leader but have average character. That's what independent traits should look like. Instead, Thorndike found something odd. If an officer rated a soldier highly on one trait, that same soldier tended to get high ratings across almost every other trait too, regardless of whether those traits had anything to do with each other. A soldier who was physically impressive was also rated as more intelligent, more disciplined, and a better leader, even when the officer had no real evidence connecting those specific qualities. Thorndike called this the halo effect, borrowing the imagery of a glowing halo spreading outward from one shining trait to illuminate everything else about a person. Why would the brain behave this way? Wouldn't it make more sense to judge each trait separately, based on its own evidence? To understand this, you have to think about what your brain is actually built to do. Your brain did not evolve to run careful, independent evaluations of every trait a person possesses. It evolved to make fast judgments with limited information, because in ancestral environments, hesitation could be costly. If you encountered someone in your ancestors' world, you often had to decide almost instantly whether this person was safe, valuable, or dangerous. There usually wasn't time or information available for a slow, itemised analysis. Physical appearance became one of the fastest, most available signals your brain could use. Symmetrical features, clear skin, and certain body proportions have historically correlated, at least loosely, with health and genetic fitness. Your ancestors' brains learned to treat these physical signals as a shortcut for judging overall quality, and then that shortcut simply expanded outward, colouring judgments about traits that had nothing to do with health or genetics at all, like honesty, intelligence, or competence. Psychologist Richard Nisbett, working with Timothy Wilson in a 1977 study, took this even further. They showed participants a video of a college instructor being interviewed. Half the participants saw a version where the instructor behaved warmly. The other half saw a version where the same instructor behaved coldly. Afterward, participants rated the instructor's physical appearance, mannerisms, and even accent. Remarkably, participants who saw the warm version rated the instructor's physical appearance as more attractive than participants who saw the cold version, even though it was the exact same person, filmed identically. One positive trait, warmth, spread outward and reshaped how people perceived something entirely separate, physical appearance itself. This tells you something crucial about how the halo effect actually works. It isn't just that attractiveness makes people seem smarter or kinder. Any single positive trait can create a halo that colours everything else, and it flows in more than one direction. Here's the counterintuitive twist. You'd think that once you're aware of a bias like this, you'd naturally correct for it. Logically, it seems obvious. If you know your brain does this, you should simply adjust your judgments. But awareness alone barely dents the halo effect. Studies replicating Thorndike's original findings across decades in job interviews, court sentencing, and academic grading continue to show the same pattern, even among evaluators who have been explicitly warned about the bias beforehand. The halo effect doesn't operate at the level of conscious reasoning, where warnings can intervene. It operates upstream, shaping the raw impression before conscious evaluation even begins. Researchers have found measurable consequences of this in the real world. Attractive job candidates are more likely to be hired and are often assumed to be more competent, even when their resumes are identical to less attractive candidates. Attractive defendants in criminal trials tend to receive more lenient sentences than unattractive defendants convicted of comparable crimes. Attractive students are sometimes graded more favorably by teachers on subjective assignments, even when the actual content of their work is the same as their peers. None of these outcomes should logically depend on appearance at all, but the halo effect doesn't care about logic. It cares about the fastest possible impression. Think about how this plays out in your own daily life today. You scroll through a dating app. A profile shows an attractive photo alongside a short bio. Before you've read a single sentence, you've likely already made assumptions about that person's personality, intelligence, and even their sense of humour based entirely on the photograph. You meet a new coworker who happens to be well-dressed and conventionally attractive. Within the first meeting, you may find yourself assuming they're more capable at their job than a colleague with the same qualifications who simply looks more ordinary. None of this is a conscious decision. It's the halo, quietly doing what it evolved to do. Social media makes this even more pronounced. A polished, attractive creator posting confident content is often assumed to be more trustworthy, more knowledgeable, and more successful than an equally qualified creator who simply doesn't present the same way. Followers rarely evaluate expertise independently from appearance. The halo effect blends the two together before anyone consciously decides to separate them. So what actually helps counteract this bias, even partially? Researchers have found that structured, blind evaluation processes reduce the halo effect's influence significantly. When resumes are stripped of names and photos, when auditions are conducted behind a physical screen, when grading is done anonymously, the halo effect's power weakens considerably. This is precisely why major orchestras began conducting blind auditions behind screens, starting in the 1970s and 1980s, and why the proportion of women hired in professional orchestras increased substantially afterward. Removing the visual halo allowed the actual skill being evaluated to finally stand on its own. Your ancestors weren't foolish for making fast judgments based on limited signals. In a world where danger could arrive without warning, a quick read of trustworthiness or competence, however imperfect, was often better than no read at all. But that same fast, halo-driven judgment system, built for small ancestral groups where a glance genuinely mattered for survival, now runs inside hiring committees, courtrooms, and social media feeds. Systems your ancestors' brains were never designed to navigate fairly. Knowing about the halo effect won't make it disappear from your own mind. It will still glow the moment you meet someone new, colouring your first impression before you've gathered a single piece of real evidence. But it does give you something valuable: the ability to notice the glow and to pause before letting one shining trait illuminate an entire person you barely know. You meet someone new. Within a few seconds, your brain hands you an answer about who they are. But now you understand exactly where that answer actually came from, and exactly how much of it you should trust.